from afar, it's hard to tell exactly how seriously the White House is taking all of this, the Fitzgerald investigation. How seriously are they taking it? What do they think?
Well, the president has said that he just thinks that there's a lot of background noise out there, but privately inside the West Wing, people are very nervous. Nervous that they may lose the two most powerful men in the White House besides the president and vice president, and that's Karl Rove and the vice president's chief of staff, Scooter Libby. What we learned today, of course, was that what Special Prosecutor Patrick Fitzgerald may be focusing on is a possible cover-up. That is that Rove and Libby both tried to conceal their actions and possibly misled prosecutors throughout this 2-year investigation. This is noteworthy because the key question in all of this has been, have Rove and Libby been truthful with prosecutors about their meetings and discussions with reporters about Valerie Plame, who, of course, is the outed CIA operative. And we know, of course, that Rove and both Libby contend that they heard about Plame's identity from reporters. Some reporters have disputed that.
Nora, we have learned that the alleged crimes for which they may be indicted, these two and possibly others, took place after the investigation started, which is to say they're not directly related to the leak itself, or they're not the leak itself. Has the White House begun to go on the offensive at all? It seems to me they have a legitimate complaint here. Are they voicing it to you, to anyone on background? Are they starting to go after Fitzgerald, as the Clinton administration used to do against Ken Starr pretty effectively?
That's an excellent question, and they have not gone after Special Prosecutor Patrick Fitzgerald, who many people call, well, they call him apolitical. But I think what we hear developing from some Republicans outside the White House is that they are beginning to develop a PR strategy, if you will, in order to begin to rebut these charges if anyone inside the White House or that served in the White House is indicted. So that strategy is developing. Obviously, they have to keep it pretty quiet. They're concerned about doing that so early, even before any indictment is announced. And there's also some discussion about who would replace Rove and Libby if, in fact, they have to leave the White House in order to defend themselves against these charges. I think that PR strategy is going to become very clear next week if and when Fitzgerald hands down these indictments.
Well, we've got less than a week to go before this grand jury is dissolved. And so if he's going to indict, he's likely to do it within the next 6 days.
Right.
So it seems a little late to be getting your PR out there. Is it your sense that the White House is maybe a little paralyzed by the absence of Karl Rove, who I know hasn't been quite as involved as he normally is?
It may be the case that the White House is paralyzed, and that's what some Republicans suggest has been showing up, why there was this sluggish response to Hurricane Katrina, why there has been this abysmal rollout in the nomination of Harriet Miers for the Supreme Court, which has been roundly criticized as just being poor politics, if you will. So there is some suggestion about that. But in terms of fighting back, it's just not the right time to do it with Fitzgerald, who many people call the toughest prosecutor in America. And you're right, he's not going after what looks like the initial charge, which is who disclosed the covert identity of Valerie Plame. It looks like now there is a focus on a potential cover-up. Did members of the White House lie about how they treated Wilson, their meetings with reporters, etc., and were they out to get Wilson because he had raised questions about the president's rationale for the Iraq War?
Oh, it's hard to overstate how big this story could potentially become over the next week. Nora O'Donnell, I know, will be there covering it for us.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Nora. We'll talk to you again. Well, as the Karl Rove indictment situation continues to develop, there's more bad news today for Harriet Miers. Here to gleefully discuss both of these topics, the author of the new book, How the Republicans Stole Christmas, my old pal, Bill Press. Welcome, Bill.
Hey, Tucker, we got it backwards. You're supposed to be on the East Coast, and I'm supposed to be in California.
No, I think we've got it just about right. So, Bill, tell me, I'm happy to be here. It's kind of hard to defend, it seems to me, the fact that, there's a lot we don't know, but here's what we do know, that Fitzgerald is likely to indict on charges that are not directly related to the alleged crime he was asked to investigate in the first place, right? So, perjury, obstruction of justice, conspiracy, these are potential crimes that took place after the investigation began. Here's the point. Does that bother you at all?
No. Look, here's the... it's always that way. Watergate, they didn't get them on the burglary, they got them on the cover-up. Clinton, What he did with Monica was not a crime. He lied about it under oath when he was given the deposition.
Right.
So if these guys, first of all, and Nora and I talked about this yesterday, there's still the possible conspiracy charge because we know that Rove and Libby were talking to each other before her identity became public. But if, and this is a big if they lied to the grand jury, if they tried to obstruct justice, if they tried to cover up, that's a crime. And these guys, Tucker, you and I have seen this so often. The cover-up is always worse than the crime, and it could be in this case.
Well, it definitely sounds like it's the cover-up that, if people are indicted, will be the cause of those indictments. But it does kind of raise the question, why was this special counsel given the power to investigate this in the first place if the original charge was not worthy of prosecution? I think we've lost track of how difficult it is to prosecute someone for leaking the name of Valerie Plame. We don't know if she was covert, for one thing. We still have no idea if she met the definition of a covert agent. We don't know that Karl Rove or Scooter Libby or anyone else knew that she was covert. In other words, they were never going to be indicted for that.
No, not necessarily. Again, remember how it started, Tucker. It started because the CIA believed that a crime may have been committed in leaking her identity. They asked John Ashcroft, the Bush Justice Department, to appoint a special counsel. Ashcroft recused himself. He appointed a special counsel. They thought there was enough evidence to look into it. And again, it's like Ken Starr. He goes after Watergate, and he ends up somewhere else with Clinton lying about this sex act with Monica. This may be the same thing. He goes after espionage, doesn't find it, but then he finds out that these guys came in and lied to the grand jury. That's a crime.
But as you point out, it's potentially a crime at this point. But as you point out, this always happens. This always happens. Special prosecutors, special counsels always expand what they're looking at, and it's always bad. Why did the White House give this guy the authority to do this? Why didn't they just hang tough and say, no, the Justice Department, a regular prosecutor is going to look into this, and we're not going to give this guy all this autonomy? Why'd they do that?
Because, Tucker, politicians, even smart politicians, as we've learned, always do stupid things. If, in fact, Libby and Rove felt that the way to get to Joe Wilson was to put his wife's name out there and talk to reporters, or if they felt they could play games with the grand jury, and again, this is all, we don't know for a fact that they did, it was just downright dumb, stupid arrogance of power, and that's what always trips up the politicians of both parties, Tucker.
Well, if they're lying to the grand jury, Scooter Libby, who was a very well-known and very highly regarded lawyer in private practice before he came to the vice president's office, if he intentionally lied to the grand jury, I doubt he did. That's insanity. I agree with you. I don't believe he did. Now, Harriet Miers, given what we're learning today, I know you're cackling, and I think fairly so, but we're learning today that Republicans on the Judiciary Committee, as well as, of course, Democrats, are sending signals to the White House that she's going to get a really rough time. Does this mean she's not going to make it? Does it mean the White House is going to pull her nomination before she gets there? What's going to happen?
Tucker, first of all, I got to say, I've never seen anything bungled as badly as this woman's nomination. I think she should sue George Bush for malpractice. The way they've handled this. And, she sent the questionnaire up to Capitol Hill. The Republicans sent it back to her with basically, it was like a fourth-grade exam, right? Incomplete, stamped at the top of it. I'm starting to feel sorry for her because I think when she gets in front of that committee, compare her to John Roberts, Tucker. John Roberts was smooth. He knew the law. He'd argued all those cases in front of the Supreme Court. You were dazzled by his intellect and his legal skills. She doesn't have it, Tucker. She doesn't have the background, and I think they're going to chew her up.
I couldn't agree more, and it's not only a disaster, it's an ever-escalating disaster. It's snowballing. It's getting worse every single day. Then you hear in one of the questionnaires, or in the questionnaire she sent back to Congress, apparently she got a constitutional law question wrong, the person who's up for the Supreme Court. I think this is, and I've said since day one, a really bad idea nominating Harriet Miers. But do you think it makes political sense to pull her back now? Put on your strategist cap. What would you do?
It's awfully hard for this administration. They've never said it yet. They've never said we made a mistake. They've never said something is wrong. I think what I would do is I would talk to Harriet Miers and get her to withdraw her nomination. That way the president saves face, and she can just say, whatever. They're being too mean to me. I want to spend more. Hey, Tucker, she can give the spin. You and I are masters at that, right? She needs to spend more time with her family or whatever, but not to go through the process. You know what they're down to now? They're asking the Republicans on the Hill, on the Judiciary Committee, to vote for her in order to save the Bush presidency, because everything else is going bad. They're saying George Bush can't afford to lose this one. That is so weak an argument, and it's certainly not an argument that's worth putting somebody on the Supreme Court
That's exactly right, and a bad decision redeems nothing. Make the right decisions, and in the end, history will judge you well. Bill Press, A man who history will judge well, I think, despite your politics. Thanks.
Hey, Tucker, you're a good friend. Good to be with you, man.
Thanks, Bill. Still to come, second-term scandals. They always happen. How does the Bush administration's crises compare to the Clinton years? We'll ask actor, comedian, and historian Robert Wool about that next. He's got a new show in the works that teaches history with a twist. Plus, sexism in sports. If girls are allowed to play football, why shouldn't boys be allowed to play on the girls' field hockey team? I mean, despite the kilts. It's rough and tumble time on The Situation. Next.
A lot of pillagers are out of work these days with so many people switching to Capital One. I'm helping these guys find new jobs. Soap for cleaning. Yeah. These guys aren't what I would call management material. Some aren't adjusting too well.
For low rates and great rewards, switch to Capital One.
What's in your wallet? Hello. Try a delicious apple. Contains all the knowledge of the universe.
Look, I know you're Satan. If I eat this apple, we're gonna have to start wearing clothes and worrying about things like tax brackets and counting carbs. So, no thanks.
Hindsight is easy. It's thinking ahead that's hard. But that's how Liberty Mutual serves our customers and why we're one of the world's leading insurance companies.
Every one of your senses has been made a priority. The new 6-speed all-wheel drive IS from Lexus.
Beaverton Honda continues to be the only dealership in Oregon to take the guesswork completely out of buying a pre-owned car with our 6-month, 6,000-mile warranty and our 7-day right of exchange. And look at these values, like this 99 Honda Accord EX, it's the top of the line, moonroof, all the equipment, only $89.77, or this 01 Civic LX power windows, lock, steering, $89.77. The October pre-owned sale is on at Beaverton Honda Used Cars. Come see us.
She's over there.
Yeah, worldwide, intercontinental. What you know about me switching to tempo? 411, that's for your info. Make sure it sound like.
As you can see, Comcast is way faster than DSL and dial-up, so downloads don't take forever. Comcast high-speed internet. It's Comcastic.
Matthews, weeknights at 7 on MSNBC.
Hello, I'm Natalie Allen. In the news tonight, Hurricane Wilma has been pounding Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula for hours now, including the resorts of Cancun and Cozumel. Its sustained winds are at 140 miles an hour, and it's dumping torrential rain. Wilma is moving forward at just 3 miles an hour. It's expected to linger over the Yucatan through much of Saturday, then head for Florida. Forecasters say it could hit South Florida Monday afternoon. Now back to Tucker Cross.
Welcome back. President Bush is having a pretty tough year. Iraq, Katrina, the CIA leak investigation. At the moment, it looks hopeless for the White House. But maybe the rest of us could use a little historical perspective. My next guest is working on an excellent new